A rich man helped a small boy selling candy on the street. When he later visited the boy's mother in the hospital, she opened her eyes wide and gasped. Today, we will share a very touching story about love, family, and second chances. It is the story of a small boy selling candy on the street to help his sick mother. One day, a rich man sees him and decides to help. But what he finds out changes everything. This story shows how kindness can change lives and how love can bring people back together. We hope this story warms your heart and gives you hope. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more simple English stories that are full of emotion and meaning. Now, let's begin today's story. The sun was high in the sky, shining hot over busy downtown Houston. The sidewalks looked like they were shaking in the heat. Michael stood at the corner of Main and McKinney, holding a small, worn basket filled with neatly wrapped candy. His sneakers were old and torn, barely protecting his feet from the hot ground. Sweat rolled down his face, but he stayed focused, watching people walk by with a calm look that was surprising for a 6-year-old. "Candy, ma'am?" he asked a woman walking by in shiny high heels. She didn't answer. Instead, she held her purse tighter and kept walking, like the small boy was dangerous. Her strong perfume stayed in the air after she left. Michael didn't say anything else. He stood straight and turned back to the crowd. The city kept moving. Businessmen looked at their watches. Tourists pointed at tall buildings. Street sellers shouted over the loud noise of cars and machines. No one stopped for the boy with the basket. No one saw the hunger in his big brown eyes or how hard he held the basket handle until his knuckles turned white. "Please, sir, just $1, Michael said to an older man in a suit, showing him a small peppermint. The man didn't even slow down. He was talking on his phone and kept walking. Michael watched him disappear into the crowd, then lowered his arm and let out a sigh. The basket felt heavier now. He sat down on the sidewalk, pulling his legs close so he wouldn't get in the way. Houston's streets were not kind to anyone who stopped too long, especially a child like him. He was too young to work, too small to carry such a big responsibility. Far from downtown, in a small apartment at the edge of the city, Carolyn lay on a thin mattress. The bed was pushed against the wall. Only a little light came through the broken curtain. She coughed hard, her body shaking. She pressed her hand to her chest, hoping the pain would go away. The apartment smelled damp and old. A ceiling fan turned slowly above her, making a soft, creaking sound. She looked at the door and thought about Michael. She had asked him not to go out today, but he said he had to. His little face had looked so serious. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'll be back soon, Mama. Just rest, okay?" Carolyn felt her chest tighten. Not from the sickness this time, but from guilt. She had dreamed of giving Michael a happy childhood full of love and laughter. But instead, he had a life of hard work and worry. Her eyes filled with tears. "Be strong for him," she whispered. Back on Main Street, Michael stood up again. His heart got stronger every time someone said no. He saw a woman give $1 to a man begging on the sidewalk. She smiled kindly at the man. But when Michael walked up to her and offered chocolate for the same dollar, she shook her head and walked away fast. He didn't understand. Weren't they both just trying to stay alive? The hours passed. The sun moved lower in the sky. Michael's stomach hurt from hunger, but he didn't stop. The candy wasn't for him. Every dollar was for his mother's medicine, the medicine she needed to live. That thought gave him strength as people ignored him or spoke to him coldly. Later, as the shadows got longer, Michael saw a group of children his age playing with a frisbee in a park nearby. They laughed and ran, their faces clean and happy. Michael stopped walking for a moment. The basket in his hand felt heavy again, like it was something that kept him away from their world. He swallowed hard and looked back at the sidewalk. There was no time to play. His mother needed him. When Michael finally got home, the sky was full of orange and pink colors. He opened the door quietly and stepped inside. Carolyn was still lying on the mattress. Her face lit up softly when she saw him. She reached out her hand, like just seeing him gave her strength. "Did you sell much today, sweetheart?" she asked. Her voice was quiet and weak. Michael set down the basket and knelt beside her. He pulled out some wrinkled bills and coins from his pocket. "Enough to get some medicine tomorrow," he said with a small smile. He didn't tell her about the blister on his heel or the many hours with no sales. That didn't matter. He had made it through the day, and for now, that was enough. Carolyn touched his cheek with her shaking hand. Her eyes were full of pride and sadness. "You're so strong, Michael," she whispered. "Stronger than I'll ever be." Suddenly, Carolyn's breathing changed. She let go of Michael's hands. Her eyes began to close. "Mom?" he called. His voice was unsure. Carolyn didn't answer. Panic filled Michael. He dropped his candy box, and his voice grew louder. "Mom, wake up, please." His small hands shook her shoulders, but her head dropped to one side. His chest hurt. Tears filled his eyes, but he blinked them away. There was no time to cry. He grabbed the empty water bottle and ran out the door. His feet hit the ground hard as he yelled for help. The hospital was cold and smelled like chemicals. It was very different from the hot streets outside. Michael held Carolyn's hand while a nurse helped him push her in a wheelchair. Her face was pale, and her breathing was slow and weak. Michael's heart beat fast as he watched her lean forward. Her head dropped again. "She needs a doctor," Michael said. His small voice shook as they reached the front desk. The nurse looked at them quickly, then pointed to a clipboard. "Fill this out and wait," she said without emotion. Michael tried to hold the pen, but his fingers shook. The small writing was hard to understand. A doctor finally came. But when he saw Carolyn's old clothes and Michael's candy-stained shirt, his face changed. His voice was short and cold. "She needs tests, blood work, x-rays, maybe more," the doctor said. He handed Michael a paper with a price written on it. Michael stared at the numbers. He didn't know how much it was, but it was more than he had ever seen. "Please, sir, can you help her now?" "I'll pay later," he begged. The doctor sighed. "I'm sorry. That's hospital policy." Michael's eyes filled with tears as Carolyn's quiet breaths filled the room. He wiped his face and stood tall. "I'll get the money," he said with a strong voice. He turned and walked toward the door, holding his candy box tight. His mother's life was now in his small hands. As the streetlights turned on and the hot day became a sticky night, the city was still busy. Car horns, voices, and fans filled the air. Michael walked through the crowd, the candy box bumping against his chest. His steps were not as strong now. He was tired, but he didn't give up. "Candy, just $1, he called. His voice was rough and cracked, but strong. Across the street, Jonathan Lockwood stepped out of a tall glass building. His clean shoes clicked on the ground. He loosened his tie and took a deep breath in the warm air. His meeting ended an hour ago, but he still felt stressed. His phone buzzed. It was Brittany again. He didn't answer. He put the phone back in his pocket. He didn't want another dinner with her fake charm and empty laughs. They had started seeing each other again months ago, but it wasn't the same. The love was gone. He couldn't stop thinking that she only loved his money. As he walked across the street, his eyes saw Michael. The boy stood at the corner, so small in the crowd. Something about how Michael stood, tired but strong, made Jonathan slow down. He watched as Michael walked up to a man in a suit and held out a candy bar. "Sir, please, it's just $1, Michael said. His voice was weak but firm. The man didn't stop. He walked past Michael like he wasn't even there. The boy's words were lost in the loud sounds of the city. Michael stood still for a moment. His shoulders dropped a little, but then he stood up straight again and moved to another group. Jonathan stayed where he was. He felt curious. He had seen kids on the street before. Houston had many of them, but this one felt different. It wasn't just that Michael kept trying. It was the sadness in his voice. Without knowing why, Jonathan stepped closer. "Hey, kid," he called. Michael turned. His eyes looked careful, but also hopeful. "You want some candy?" Michael asked quickly, holding up a crumpled chocolate bar. "Just $1. Jonathan looked at him. The boy's face was dirty. His eyes looked too serious for someone so small. His clothes were too big for his thin body. And those shoes? Jonathan couldn't stop looking at them. They were so old, they were barely still shoes. "What are you doing out here this late?" Jonathan asked. Michael moved a little on his feet. "Selling candy." "For what?" Michael held the box tighter. "For my mom. She's sick," he said in a quieter voice, like saying, "It would make it worse." Jonathan felt something strange in his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't had in a long time. He looked at his watch, then back at Michael. "Where's your mom?" "At home," Michael answered quickly. Then after a pause, "Well, not really. She's at the hospital now." Jonathan raised his eyebrows. "What's wrong with her?" Michael lifted his shoulders a little, but his eyes gave him away. They were full of fear. The kind of fear that came from knowing too much, too young. "She's just sick." Jonathan waited. A part of him said to walk away. This wasn't his problem. A city like this had many stories like Michael's Persis. But another part, a quiet, stubborn part, told him to stay. He didn't know why, but he wanted to help. "All right," Jonathan said, taking out his wallet. "I'll buy the candy. All of it." Michael's face lit up. He quickly handed Jonathan all the candy bars. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." Jonathan gave him the money, then paused. "Take me to the hospital." Michael stopped. "What?" "Your mom," Jonathan said gently. "Take me to her." Michael's eyes looked around, unsure if this was some kind of trick. But Jonathan looked calm and serious. After a moment, Michael nodded. "Okay." As they walked, Jonathan's mind was full of thoughts. He looked down at the boy walking beside him. Michael's small legs moved fast to keep up. There was something strong about him, something quiet and tough. It reminded Jonathan of himself many years ago, before all the business meetings and money talks. The hospital stood ahead. Its bright lights looked sharp in the night. Jonathan's chest felt tight as they got closer. He didn't know what he was walking into, but something about it felt important. The hospital doors opened with a soft sound. A cool gust of air came out, making Michael's sweaty skin feel cold. He held his candy box tighter and looked nervously at Jonathan, who walked in beside him. Jonathan looked around. There were rows of hard plastic chairs with tired people sitting in them. A quiet television played in the corner. Somewhere in the distance, machines beeped. The place smelled like cleaning supplies, mixed with the smell of people who hadn't bathed. This place was very different from the clean, private clinics Jonathan usually visited. Michael's small voice broke the silence. "She's over there." Jonathan looked where he pointed. In the corner, a woman lay in a thin hospital bed. Her face looked pale on the flat, gray pillow. Her weak hands held the blanket tightly, like she was fighting something invisible. Her chest moved up and down slowly, her breathing hard and shallow. Jonathan frowned. He felt a quiet worry grow inside him. Carolyn moved a little when Michael walked up. Her eyes opened slowly, and when she saw Jonathan, her body became still. Her lips opened like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Fear showed on her face, but it quickly turned to shock. Jonathan noticed her reaction. He looked confused and asked in a quiet voice, "Do I know you?" Carolyn held the blanket tighter. Her knuckles turned white. Memories rushed back. The hotel room, the soft city lights through the window, and the man who had entered her life for one night and then disappeared the next morning. She never thought she would see him again, especially not like this. Carolyn began, her voice rough and shaky. But Michael cut in, cheerful and not noticing the strange feeling in the room. "Mom, this is Mr. Jonathan. He bought all my candy and came to help you," he said proudly. Then he looked at Jonathan with wide, thankful eyes. "Thank you, sir, really." Jonathan smiled a little, but his eyes stayed on Carolyn. Something about her face felt very familiar, though he couldn't figure out why. "You look familiar," he said softly, mostly to himself. Carolyn looked away. Her heart beat fast. She didn't know if she felt more scared or more thankful. "It's nothing," she said in a weak voice. "You must be mistaken." Michael, not noticing the strange moment between them, sat in the chair beside her bed. "Mom, he's really nice. He said he'd help us." He smiled and touched her hand gently. Jonathan looked at the boy and felt something shift in his heart. He pulled the chair closer and sat down. He leaned in a little and asked quietly, "What happened to her?" "She's just sick," Michael answered simply. His voice didn't show how serious the situation really was, but the doctor said we need a lot of money to help her. Jonathan's jaw tightened. He looked at Carolyn again. Her face looked thin and tired. There was sweat on her forehead. He had seen people in bad situations before, but something about this moment, the boy's hope and the mother's quiet strength, made him feel something deep inside. Carolyn looked at him again. Her face was careful, but her eyes showed something. Maybe it was thanks, or maybe it was just giving up. "Thank you for helping, Michael," she said in a quiet voice. Jonathan nodded, still unsure what to say. "It's the least I could do," he answered. No one spoke for a moment. The room was quiet, except for the sounds of the hospital. Beeping from a machine, nurses walking quickly, soft voices in the hallway. Jonathan looked at Michael. The boy was quiet now, his small hand still resting on his mom's. Then Jonathan spoke again, his voice firmer. "I'll make sure she gets what she needs." Carolyn's lips pressed together. She felt both thankful and unsure. Could she trust this man? Should she? But when she looked at Michael, so strong and hopeful, she knew she didn't have many options. "Thank you," she whispered. It wasn't enough, but it was all she could say. Jonathan stood up. The chair made a soft sound on the floor. "I'll talk to the doctors," he said. Then he looked at Michael. "Stay with your mom." As Jonathan walked toward the nurse's desk, Carolyn watched him go. Her mind was full of thoughts. The past weighed heavy on her, and she wasn't sure what the future would bring. Michael moved closer to her and said in a soft voice, "It's going to be okay, Mom." His small voice was full of hope. That hope was the only thing keeping her strong. Carolyn reached out slowly and touched his cheek. Her hand was shaking. "I hope so, sweetheart," she said. "I really hope so." The hospital room slowly faded from Carolyn's mind as memories returned, strong and unwanted. She closed her eyes. The soft sounds of machines blended into the whispers of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else, a younger version of her, full of hope. It had been 6 years ago, on a rainy night in Houston, when she first met Jonathan. She had been working the night shift at a downtown hotel. Her feet were tired after standing for hours. The lobby was quiet, except for the sound of high heels or the soft rustling of newspapers. Then he came in, pushing through the spinning doors. His suit looked messy, and his tie was loose, like it had been choking him all day. Carolyn remembered how he looked, tired, worn out, but still carrying a kind of quiet pride. He had mumbled about needing a room, his words not very clear. She gently guided him to the front desk. There was pain in his eyes, pain she also knew well, even though she didn't know his story. "Rough night?" she had asked kindly, not really looking for an answer. He looked at her longer than most guests did. "You could say that," he replied, his voice filled with deep tiredness. What followed was a blur of quiet words, shared glances, and a connection neither could explain. She had brought him water and medicine for his headache. She helped him to his room. Then came a moment of closeness, quick, unexpected, two lonely people trying to feel something real. By morning, he was gone. All he left behind was the soft smell of his cologne and an empty feeling in her heart. A few months later, Carolyn found out she was pregnant. The news shocked her, but even worse was knowing she had no way to reach Jonathan. She didn't know his last name. All she had were faded memories of his face and the short time they spent together. Her life changed fast. She quit her hotel job. The hours were too long and the work too hard for her body. She found a job at a small diner instead. She worked through tired legs and swollen feet to get ready for her baby. Michael was born on a cold morning in January. His first cry broke through her tired body like a bright light. The moment she held him, she promised herself she would protect him no matter what. The years after that were hard. She worked many different jobs, cleaning homes, delivering newspapers, fixing clothes. She earned just enough to buy food and pay for rent. Michael learned early what it meant to struggle, though Carolyn tried to protect him from the worst of it. Her body started getting weak. First, it was a cough that didn't go away, then a tired feeling that never left. But she kept going. She smiled through the pain and told Michael not to worry. Now, lying in a hospital bed, her chest hurt, not only from sickness, but from seeing Jonathan again. She couldn't believe it. The man speaking firmly to the nurses, dressed neatly, was the same broken man she had helped years ago. He didn't remember her. That much was clear. Maybe that was better. Her thoughts ran wild. Should she tell him the truth? What if he refused to believe that Michael was his son? What if he turned away from them? She couldn't imagine what that would do to Michael, to see the hope fade from his face. But if she didn't tell him, would she be taking away her son's only chance at having a father? Michael needed help now. Her strength was gone, and she didn't have many options left. She looked at Michael. His small hand still rested on hers. His face was peaceful in the soft light above them. He looked so much like Jonathan, the same serious look when he was thinking, the same determination. Carolyn swallowed hard and looked toward the door. Jonathan had walked out moments ago. She didn't trust him, not yet. But trust didn't matter now. Pride didn't matter. Michael's future did. For that, she would take the risk. She closed her eyes and let out a shaky breath. The choice was heavy, but she knew what she had to do. For Michael, She had to face the truth, even if it hurt. In the quiet hallway outside, Jonathan leaned against the wall. His arms were crossed tightly, and his eyes looked down at the floor tiles. But his mind was far away, lost in thoughts he had pushed down for years. He thought about Brittany. Her name echoed in his mind, bringing back the pain she caused. She had left him when he needed her most. No goodbye, no reason. At the same time, his company was close to falling apart. Every deal was a gamble. Every choice felt like a risk. Jonathan had worked hard for years, staying up late and working through weekends to save the company he had built. It had almost fallen apart. During that time, Brittany left him. He still remembered the day clearly. She had looked calm, her goodbye practiced and cold. "This isn't working anymore, Jonathan," she had said. Her eyes were distant. He had begged her to stay, promising things would get better. But Brittany wasn't someone who stayed when things got tough. She left Houston soon after and disappeared into a life he could only guess at. Back then, her leaving had broken him. Now it just felt like an old scar, still there, but not as painful. That night, 6 years ago, he had walked through the city alone, looking for a way to forget. He found a bar, drank too much, and ended up in a hotel. The memory was hazy, but one thing stood out: a woman's voice, soft and kind. He tried to remember more, but it was like trying to hold sand. He couldn't remember her face, but he remembered how she spoke with care. She had helped him to his room, given him water, and stayed longer than she needed to. He furrowed his brows, feeling bits and pieces come back. Was there more to that night? He remembered a soft smell, like lavender. He remembered sheets moving and a silence that didn't feel like his own. Jonathan shook his head. He had pushed that night away, thinking it wasn't important. A moment he had forgotten during a time when everything was falling apart. But now, in this hospital, that night was back in his mind and wouldn't leave. He thought of Carolyn. Her body was weak and thin, but when she looked at him, something had passed between them. It was like she knew him. That made him feel uneasy. Then he thought of Michael. The boy looked so much like he did when he was young. That couldn't be a mistake. Jonathan let out a long breath and ran a hand through his hair. His life, built on careful plans and hard work, suddenly felt fragile, like a house made of cards about to fall. His current relationship with Brittany now seemed strange. He had gone back to her a few months ago, thinking it was the right thing. But each dinner, each talk, had left him feeling empty. Her laugh didn't sound real anymore. Her sweet words felt fake. The more they talked, the more he saw how little they knew each other. He pictured Michael's face again, and Carolyn's soft voice thanking him. He didn't understand why he had stayed to help them. He didn't know why he hadn't just walked away. But something inside him had moved, something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of duty, a feeling of connection, of being human again. Jonathan stood at the hospital room door. His hand hovered over the handle. Inside, Carolyn moved slightly as he stepped back in. Their eyes met for a second. It was quiet, but something passed between them. Something that felt like memory, tension, or maybe even truth. She looked away quickly, as if holding his gaze was too hard. Jonathan cleared his throat, not knowing what to say. "The doctors will check on you soon," he said. His voice was softer than he meant it to be. He glanced at Michael, still sitting next to her, his small hand gently holding hers. Carolyn gave a small nod. "Thank you," she said quietly, but her voice was careful, not open. Jonathan slowly sat down in the chair beside Michael. Jonathan's mind was full of thoughts. He wanted to ask Carolyn if they had met before. He wanted to ask why she looked at him with both fear and something familiar. But the words didn't come out. Instead, he looked at Michael. "How long have you been selling candy?" he asked. Michael sat up straighter. His young energy returned, even in the sad room. "A few weeks," he said proudly. "Mom needed medicine, so I thought I could help." Jonathan slowly nodded. His heart felt heavy. He had always thought he was good at reading people, at knowing what they wanted. But this boy was different. Michael's kindness and quiet strength surprised him. Jonathan looked at Carolyn again. She was watching Michael too, and her face had a soft, sad look. Jonathan suddenly realized something. This woman and her son weren't just two strangers needing help. They were making him think about parts of his life he had tried to forget, his mistakes, his regrets, and the empty space in his heart. Dear friends listening to this story, do you have a small family of your own? If yes, please leave a comment saying family. If not, please write love. Let's continue. The hospital room was quiet. The only sounds were the beeping of machines and the soft voices from the hallway. Carolyn lay back against the pillow, her thin body almost disappearing under the white sheets. Her hand shook a little as she pulled the blanket up. She looked at Michael, then at Jonathan. She couldn't keep the truth inside anymore. It had been growing inside her since she saw him walk into the room. But it was hard to say out loud. The words were stuck, full of fear and doubt. "Michael," she said softly. Her voice was weak. "Sweetheart, can you wait outside for a moment? I need to talk to Mr. Jonathan." Michael looked confused, but nodded. "Okay, Mom," he said. He jumped down from the chair and pushed open the heavy door, leaving them alone. Jonathan watched the door close, then turned to Carolyn. His face showed no emotion. "What is it?" he asked. His voice was calm but careful. Carolyn let out a shaky breath and held the blanket tighter. "I need to tell you something," she said in a quiet voice. "About Michael." Jonathan frowned and leaned forward. "What about him?" Her lips shook. She closed her eyes, trying to find the courage to go on. He's your son." The words hung in the air like a storm. Jonathan froze. His brain tried to understand what he had just heard. "What?" he said, his voice full of disbelief. Carolyn opened her eyes. Now, even though she looked weak, her gaze was strong. "That night, 6 years ago, at the hotel, I didn't know how to find you after. When I found out I was pregnant, you were already gone. I raised him alone." Jonathan leaned back in his chair. He let out a deep breath. His thoughts were racing. The memories from that night came rushing back. The soft voice, the kindness, the feeling of a connection. It had been her. And Michael, the boy, looked just like him. E hadn't wanted to see it before, but now it was clear. "Are you sure?" he asked. His voice was low. "Are you sure he's mine?" Carolyn's face showed pain, but she nodded. "Yes," she said firmly. "I wouldn't be telling you if I wasn't sure." Jonathan rubbed his forehead. His thoughts were a mess: shock, doubt, guilt, and something else too. Maybe this was meant to happen. Maybe he couldn't run from it anymore. He paused. "I need to make sure. I'll get a DNA test." Carolyn nodded again, her face a mix of worry and hope. "I understand," she said softly. "Do whatever you need to do." Jonathan stood up quickly and started walking back and forth. His shoes clicked loudly on the hospital floor. He felt like the room was getting smaller, the news too heavy. "Why didn't you try to find me?" he asked. His voice was louder than he meant it to be. Carolyn's eyes filled with hurt. "Do you think I didn't want to?" she said. Her voice was shaking, but strong. I didn't know your name, your address, nothing. You were a stranger to me. I had no way to find you. I did the only thing I could. I raised Michael the best I could." Her words cut into him. He stopped walking. His eyes looked at the floor. He knew she was telling the truth, but the guilt still stayed. "I'll arrange the test," he said finally. His voice was soft again. "If Michael is my son," Jonathan said, "then I'll do my best to help and be there for him." Carolyn looked at him, her eyes softer now. The worry on her face was still there, but she gave a small nod. "That's all I ask," she said. Just then, the door opened a little and Michael peeked inside. His curious eyes looked at both adults. "Can I come back in now?" he asked in a light, innocent voice. Jonathan looked at Carolyn, and she nodded. "Yes, sweetheart," she said, her voice calm again. "Come here." Michael walked quickly to her side. He climbed into the chair and held her hand. Then he looked up at Jonathan and smiled brightly. "Thanks for helping my mom, Mr. Jonathan." Jonathan gave a small smile, though his mind was not calm. As he looked at Michael's big eyes and strong spirit, something changed inside him. The walls he had built around his heart started to break, and for once, he didn't try to fix them. He sat beside Michael with a quiet feeling growing in his chest. No matter what the test said, he knew he couldn't walk away now. The hospital waiting room smelled sharp and clean. Jonathan sat on a hard chair, staring at the envelope in his hands. On the front, it said, "DNA test results." The simple words felt heavy, like they were mocking him. He had asked for the test with a clear mind, but now, holding the answer, he didn't feel ready. His fingers touched the edge of the envelope, but he didn't open it right away. He felt nervous, unsure what the paper would say or how it would make him feel. He thought of Michael's proud smile and Carolyn's soft voice. His head was full of thoughts. He wanted to be ready, but a part of him was scared of how this might change everything. A nurse walked by. Somewhere down the hall, a baby started to cry. The sound pulled Jonathan back to the moment. He took a deep breath and opened the envelope slowly, as if going too fast would change the truth. There it was, clear as day. Michael was his son. Jonathan leaned back in his chair. He let out a deep breath, like he had been holding it for hours. So many feelings filled him at once. Relief, shock, guilt. They all fought for space in his heart. He thought about Michael's young life. He hadn't been there for any of it. Carolyn had done it all on her own. Jonathan stood up quickly, holding the paper tightly. His shoes clicked loudly as he walked down the hall. He moved faster now, his mind made up. When he got to the room, Carolyn was sitting up a little, with pillows behind her back. Michael was next to her in the chair, swinging his legs. He looked up with a big smile when he saw Jonathan. "Hi, Mr. Jonathan," he said. "Did you get the papers?" Jonathan gave a small smile, though he felt heavy inside. "Yeah, Michael, I got them." Michael didn't ask for more. He looked back at his mom, still smiling. His sweet innocence made Jonathan's heart hurt in a strange way. Jonathan looked at Michael for a long moment. Even in a hard time like this, the boy smiled. It was both beautiful and sad. Carolyn cleared her throat softly. Jonathan turned to her. Her face showed little emotion, but her hands were tight in her lap. "I guess you read the results," she said, her voice quiet but steady. Jonathan nodded and walked closer. He didn't sit. He couldn't. "He's my son," he said. The words felt heavy in the quiet room. Carolyn looked down. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then she looked up again, meeting his eyes. "I told you because I had no choice," she said. Her voice shook a little. I'm not strong enough to care for him the way he needs anymore. He needs someone who can give him a real chance." Her voice showed her deep pain, but also her strength. Even now, she was thinking only of Michael. Jonathan stepped closer to her bed. His voice was lower, kinder now. "I should have been there," he said. "For you. For him." Carolyn shook her head slowly. "You didn't know," she said softly. "But you know now." Jonathan bent down so he was closer to her level. His voice was firm this time. "I won't walk away. I promise, Carolyn. I'll be there for Michael, for both of you." A tear rolled down Carolyn's cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. Instead, she nodded slowly. Her body relaxed, like a heavy load had been taken off her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. Michael looked at both of them, his eyebrows scrunched up. "What's going on?" he asked. He sounded curious, but not worried. Jonathan crouched next to him and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Michael," he said, his voice kind. "Do you remember when we talked about the test?" Michael nodded. "Yeah. Was it important?" Jonathan gave a small smile, though his heart felt tight. "Very important," he said. "It means I'm not just here to help your mom. I'm here for you too." Michael blinked as he tried to understand the words. Then his face lit up with a big, happy smile. "So you're going to stay with us?" Jonathan chuckled and messed up the boy's hair a little. "Yeah, kid, I'm not going anywhere." Michael turned to his mom, his joy showing all over his face. "Mom, did you hear that? Mr. Jonathan's staying." Carolyn gave a weak smile. Her eyes were wet, but she looked happy. She reached out and held Michael's hand. "I heard, sweetheart," she said softly. "He's staying." Jonathan stood up. He looked from Carolyn to Michael and back again. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in many years, things felt clear. He had a purpose now. Not just work, not just money, but something real. As he looked at the small family in front of him, he promised himself that he would fix what had been broken, protect what he had found, and be the father that Michael deserved. Later that night, the sound of Jonathan's car pulling into the driveway told Brittany he was home. She sat by the window with a glass of wine in her hand. Her sharp eyes narrowed when she saw him get out of the car. He looked more tired than usual. Over the past few weeks, Jonathan had been distant. The charm he once had was gone, replaced by silence and something hard to read. She didn't have to wait long to find out the reason. The envelope in his hand said it all. DNA test results. Jonathan hadn't planned to tell Brittany the truth, but she kept pushing him until he gave in. "It's complicated," he said, his voice tight as they sat at the dining table in his big house. Brittany tilted her head and gave a fake smile. "Complicated?" she repeated. "Come on, Jonathan. We're supposed to be rebuilding trust, remember?" Jonathan's jaw tightened. He hated it when she used his own words against him. "Fine," he said. He tossed the envelope onto the table. "That's my son." For a moment, Brittany froze. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Then she laughed. A sharp, surprised sound. "Your son, Jonathan? Really?" she asked. "Are you sure? This doesn't sound like you." "I'm sure," Jonathan said firmly. The sound of his voice wiped the fake smile off her face. "His name is Michael. He needs me. His mom. She's sick." Brittany gripped her wine glass tightly. Her knuckles turned white. "And what about us?" she asked in a low voice. "You've barely been here. You're out playing hero for some woman and her kid. Am I just supposed to sit here and smile?" "It's not about you, Brittany," Jonathan snapped. "This is my responsibility, my son." Her smile became thin and forced. "Of course, Jonathan. I understand," she said sweetly, but her words were cold underneath. Jonathan didn't reply. He stood up, his chair making a scraping sound. "I need some air," he muttered, walking to the door. Brittany watched him leave. Her smile vanished as her fingers tightened around her glass. Her mind raced. Jealousy and fear twisted inside her into something dark. Jonathan was slipping away, and she wasn't going to let that happen. The next morning, Brittany made a call. Dr. Stephen, a well-known doctor who didn't always follow the rules, answered after 2 rings. "Brittany," he said smoothly, "what can I do for you?" "I need your help," she said in a calm voice. "It's about a patient. Her name is Carolyn Stevens." Dr. Stevens sounded interested. "Go on." "She's under your care at the hospital," Brittany said. "I need you to change her treatment." "Nothing too serious," Brittany said. "Just something small to slow her down a bit." There was a short pause on the other end of the phone. "Brittany, you know I've handled strange requests before," Dr. Stevens said, "but changing someone's treatment is risky." "I'll make it worth your time," Brittany replied firmly. "It's not life-threatening, just enough to buy me some time until things fall into place." Stephen sighed. It was clear he didn't like it, but he agreed. "Fine, but it's going to cost you." "It always does," Brittany said with a small smile. "I'll send the money today." In the next few days, Jonathan began to see changes in Carolyn. She had been feeling a little better before, but now she was getting weaker. She coughed more often. At first, Jonathan thought maybe it was just stress, but soon a strange feeling started to grow in his chest. One evening, after a checkup, Jonathan caught Dr. Stephen in the hallway. "Why isn't Carolyn getting better?" he asked, his voice sharp. "She should be improving by now." Stephen fixed his glasses, trying to look calm. "Her case is complicated," he said. "These things take time." Jonathan looked closely at him. "Are you sure there haven't been any mistakes? Nothing wrong with her treatment?" "I promise you, Mr. Lockwood, everything is being done the right way," Stephen said firmly. But something in his eyes told a different story. As Jonathan walked back to Carolyn's room, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his stomach. Something was wrong, and he couldn't just stand by and hope it would fix itself. Michael met him at the door. His small face lit up when he saw Jonathan. "Mom's resting," he said quietly. "She was coughing a lot, but she told me not to worry." Jonathan gave a gentle smile and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "We'll figure it out, Michael," he said. "I promise." But as he looked past Michael at Carolyn's pale face, Jonathan knew he had to do something. Carolyn didn't get better. Her coughs came more often, leaving her even more tired. Jonathan felt helpless, watching Michael's bright smile slowly fade, replaced with worry. The doctor's words no longer felt true. He kept saying Carolyn just needed time. But something deep inside Jonathan told him that wasn't the full story. Late one night, after Michael fell asleep in the chair beside his mother, Jonathan quietly left the room. He found a nurse he trusted and asked her to talk. She looked surprised, but agreed, leading him to a quiet spot in the hallway. "What's going on, Mr. Lockwood?" "I need to know everything about Carolyn's treatment," Jonathan said, his voice low but serious. "Every test, every medicine. And I need you to be honest with me." The nurse hesitated. "Dr. Stephen is in charge of her care. You'd need to ask him." "I'm asking you," Jonathan said again. His eyes didn't leave hers. She paused, then finally leaned closer and whispered, "Some of the things in her treatment seem strange. I've worked with Dr. Stephen a long time, and this doesn't feel right." Jonathan's jaw tightened. He thanked her and walked away quickly, his thoughts spinning. He was sure now Carolyn wasn't getting worse by accident. Someone was doing this on purpose, and he was going to find out who. Later that night, Jonathan found Dr. Stephen again. The hospital was quiet now, with only soft footsteps echoing through the halls. Jonathan didn't back down. His sharp stare and firm questions made Stephen uncomfortable. Finally, the doctor gave in. "All right," Stephen said, keeping his voice low. "It was Brittany. She called me and told me to make changes to Carolyn's treatment." Jonathan's fists clenched at his sides. "Changes?" he repeated coldly. "You mean you made her sicker?" Stephen sighed and looked down. "She said it wouldn't cause harm, just slow things down. She promised she'd deal with any problems that came up." Jonathan let out a humorless laugh. "Problems? You're talking about someone's life, Stephen. You're a doctor. What happened to your promise to help people?" Stephen flinched but didn't speak again. Jonathan didn't wait for another excuse. He turned and walked away, his mind already on what needed to happen next. Brittany was sitting in his living room when he got home. She looked calm, holding a glass of wine like everything was normal. Her nails were perfectly done, and she smiled like nothing was wrong. "You're home early," she said lightly, taking a sip. "What's the reason?" Jonathan didn't answer right away. He stood in front of her, his eyes cold. The way he looked at her made her smile slowly fade. "What did you do, Brittany?" Jonathan asked. Brittany tilted her head, pretending not to understand. "I don't know what you mean." "Carolyn's treatment," he said with no emotion. "You made Stephen change it." Her lips parted. She stopped breathing for a moment, but quickly tried to recover. "Jonathan, don't lie to me." His voice echoed in the large room. "I know what you did." "Why? Just to hold on to something that was already broken?" Brittany put down her glass. Her calm look faded. "Broken? That's what you think? That I'm the one holding on too tight?" she said, her voice getting sharper. "You've been running around playing hero for that woman and her child, like I'm not even here." Jonathan laughed bitterly. "That's funny coming from you. You didn't care when I needed you most. Do you remember when my company was about to fall apart? What did you do, Brittany? You left. No warning, no note. You just left." Brittany flinched, but stayed firm. "I wasn't going to sit and watch you destroy yourself," she said. "You were falling apart, Jonathan. I had to think about my future." "Your future?" he said bitterly. "It was always about you, wasn't it? And now that I've rebuilt everything, you just walk back into my life like nothing happened, like I owe you something." "I love you," Brittany said quickly, but her voice was shaky. "No," Jonathan said, his voice cold. "You love what I have, the money, the power. You never really cared about me. And when things got hard, you disappeared." Brittany's face changed. Her anger and fear mixed together. "And what about her?" she shouted. "You think Carolyn really loves you? She's using you, Jonathan. You're just her way out." Jonathan stepped closer. His voice was quiet, but strong. "Carolyn doesn't lie to get help. She's worked hard for everything. You try to hurt people just to stay comfortable." Brittany's shoulders dropped. She looked smaller now, all her pride fading. "Jonathan, enough," he said sharply. "We're finished. I'm done with this. I'm done with you." Her eyes filled with tears. She reached for him. "Jonathan, please." He stepped back. "Don't make this harder. Pack your things and go." The silence after Brittany left was heavy. Jonathan stood at the window, looking out at the night sky. He saw his own reflection in the glass. It reminded him how much his life had changed. His phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket. It was a message from the hospital. "Carolyn is stable. Michael is asking for you." Jonathan let out a long breath, his chest tightening. He grabbed his keys and walked to the door. His thoughts were clear now. Nothing mattered more than Carolyn and Michael. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the machines and the steady sound of Carolyn's breathing. Sunlight came in through the blinds, painting warm gold across the bed. Carolyn was still pale, but her eyes looked brighter. She smiled softly as Michael climbed onto the chair next to her. He took her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Mom, you look better," Michael said, his voice full of hope. His smile lit up the room more than the sun ever could. Carolyn gently squeezed Michael's hand. "I'm trying, sweetheart," she said. Her voice was still rough, but it was stronger now. Jonathan stood by the window with his arms crossed, watching them. He felt a wave of relief. Carolyn was getting better, slowly. For the first time, he believed they had reached a turning point. He turned toward the bed, his face softer as he saw Michael showing Carolyn a drawing. "It's us," Michael said, holding up a colorful picture. "You, me, and Mr. Jonathan." Carolyn's smile faded for a second. She looked at Jonathan. He walked closer, moving carefully. "It's good," he said, crouching beside Michael. "You drew my hair really well." Michael smiled big. "I worked hard on it." Jonathan gently messed up the boy's hair. "I can see that." That evening, after Michael fell asleep in the chair, Carolyn spoke softly. "He's happier now," she said, looking at her son. "I haven't seen him smile like that in a long time." Jonathan nodded. "He's strong, just like his mom." Carolyn looked at him, trying to see if he really meant it. "Jonathan," she said slowly, "I need to thank you for everything." "You don't have to," Jonathan replied quietly. "This is where I should be." Carolyn looked down, her fingers twisting the edge of the blanket. "I'm still learning how to trust you," she admitted. "Not for me, but for Michael. He needs someone stable, someone who won't leave." Jonathan's heart ached hearing that. He leaned forward, resting his arms on the bed. "I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "I didn't know about him before, Carolyn, but now I do. And I won't let either of you down." Carolyn stared at him for a long time. Her face gave nothing away. Then she gave a small nod. Her shoulders seemed to relax a little. "I hope you mean that," she said. "I do," Jonathan said, "and I'll show you." In the days that followed, Jonathan's promise started to become real. He came early to bring Michael breakfast. He stayed late to help Carolyn get comfortable. He played quiet card games with Michael in the hospital lounge. The bond between father and son grew stronger. They laughed more. They understood each other more. For Carolyn, watching them together made her feel both happy and sad. She saw a part of Jonathan she didn't expect, someone kind, patient, and loving. It made her heart soften, though she wasn't ready to fully trust yet. One afternoon, as Michael sat on the floor drawing again, Carolyn looked at Jonathan and said, "You've really made a difference." Jonathan looked back at her, smiling warmly. "So have you," he said. "You gave him everything, even when you had nothing. That means a lot to me." Carolyn didn't say anything right away, but then she smiled a little. A small hope grew in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she began to believe things might get better. She looked at her son's happy face and felt full of hope. For years, she had carried everything alone. But now, for the first time, she didn't feel alone anymore. Later, after Michael was in bed, Jonathan came back to the living room. Carolyn was still sitting on the couch, her hands resting on the blanket, her eyes looking out the window. "You're quiet tonight," Jonathan said, as he sat down in the chair across from her. Carolyn turned to Jonathan. Her face looked thoughtful. "I'm just getting used to everything," she said softly. "To you, to all of this." Jonathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I know it's not easy," he said. "I've made mistakes, Carolyn, big ones. But I want to do the right thing for you and Michael." Carolyn looked at him for a moment. Her eyes studied his face. "You've already done more than I ever thought you would," she said. "And Michael, he really likes you." Jonathan smiled gently. "He's a great kid. Strong, smart. He gets that from you." Carolyn let out a small laugh and shook her head. "He's stubborn too. That's from you." They both laughed quietly. The tension in the room faded, replaced by something warm and calm. They sat in silence, not awkward, but peaceful, like something new was beginning. As it got later, Jonathan stood up to leave. He paused at the door. "If you need anything," he said, "anything at all, just call me. I'll be here." Carolyn nodded, her voice steady. "I know." Jonathan looked at her for a moment longer. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke, but they both understood. Then he stepped outside. The cool night air touched his skin as he walked to his car. Inside, Carolyn leaned back on the couch. Her mind wandered. She didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. She glanced toward Michael's room. He was sleeping peacefully. She smiled. Their family wasn't perfect, and it wasn't traditional, but it was theirs, and it was enough. Together, they were starting something new, something built with love, trust, and hope. For Carolyn, Jonathan, and Michael, this was just the beginning. Did this story touch your heart? If you believe in love, family, and second chances, please click the like button, leave a comment below, and tell us how you felt. Do you have a story like this in your life? We'd love to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any new stories. We share simple English stories full of meaning, hope, and love. Thank you for being with us. See you in the next video.